Now we're going to carry that on, and we're going to say Shabbat and before. Again, أنا بتوع ما سكتين ذات الموت بينام أدوناي يلون علينا معصية بينام أدوناي يلون علينا معصية بينام בסתר עליון, בצל תודה עיתונן, אמר למקום ישראל תבוא, דיור שכאן כחכות, חיידי ועבוד ועבודו, ספר, חמת שבת ככסה. דינה וסופרה מתעולות שראים בחלל למחיר כרסומם, מדי ובאופי הלוך ומחיר תשית ובאים כל נוס בדוח האלף. גובה מן החלל לא ייגש, רק בין הזווית ושומם ושום תראה. כי אתה לא מוסיף בין סמונך, לא תונך, אלף הרב נגע לא יקבו עליך. כי מלאכה וקבלה, שמחה בכל תרסים והפיים צעונך. בין תגור ועליך שחר ובית יגלוח לימוד שבילי. אורך ימים ישביעו בערב בשורתי וינום אנה בכוח גדול ממך אנה בכוח גדול ממך תגבני תערנו אנה גיבור דושי יחידך שבעת אומר ברכים תרנו חמש שכתר אתם גובל עושים קדוש ברוך תורך אנחנו הדרך לזיק שלנו כנראה זוכה שנזדר שרתנו לקבל פס ולכנו וגאה את העלמות ועלה שתנך תשכתך ואומר יעסק הפגע בין היום נסתכל בשלב דברים הגימה בין היום נסתכל בשלב דברים בין הסתגע אבל זה הדרה גם מהמאת העולם אתה הולך לשם את הלמתים ושלוחה מהמאת נשמת תוכה ואם אתה הולך למקום הרפאה למעלה שלה יפים נעשה את זה בין זיזרון למלך מלך מלכים מלך מלכים מלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא
אמן 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 יהי שמי רבה מבורך יא רב אמן אמן
أنا بكره بدون حدود السؤال מעליו, אל אלוהים חיים, מלך עולם, כאילו חמסו חיים. ברוב חסדיו וכפר את עווניו ומעשיו הטובים, יהיו לנגד עיניו, יהיה לעומתו, עמתו נאמנה ויתהלך לפניו ברשות חיים. כל תופיע לו לפני צורו, להמשיך חל וברו, להגיע אורו, לקיים כתבונו, לזון מאמרו, כי בריתי הייתה, לצרור החיים והשלום, ותנוח נפשו בצרור החיים. ומלאכי השלום נתלתק הצרכים, וכהן גדול נתלתך יעמוד, ואתה לך לקץ הימין, ותנוח ותעמוד. נשמתך תלך למערת המכפלה, ומשם לקרובים, שם אל יראה לה, ושם הפנקס תקבל לגן עדן שבילה, ושם תחזה עמוד מסוף מלמעלה, ושם תעלה מרום ולא בחוץ תעמוד, ואתה לך לקץ ותנוח ותעמוד. שערי המקדש, נפתח מיכאל, להקים שכר, וקורבן לפני אל, להתחבר עמך המלאך הגואל, עד שערי ערבות, אשר שם ישראל, בנועם מקום זה תהי זוכה לעמוד, ואתה לך לקץ ותנוח ותעמוד. עם ראשי ישיבות וראשי דוריות, הם ישראלים וכהנים ולוויים, וישב בכיתות של צדיקים וחסידים, ובגן עדן תנוח ותעמוד, ואתה תלך לקץ ותנוח ותעמוד. הוא מזכה הרוב וישבו את חובה לשלוחו, ולא יאר כל חמתו, וישביע המלך ואין ואין. תן לנו שפקו את הזה ואין לו ראו. ותיק אתה אדוני, וישב משפטך צדיק ומלכות האחר, וחסיד, הוא מעטות, וחסיד את שלום את האמת, ושפך באמת ותשב. ואשר דיבר מלך שלטו מי יאמר לו מה תעשה, והוא באחד מישבנו נפשו, וביתה ויעש, עצור תמים פועלו, ככל דרך המשפט, אל אמונה ונאה וצדיק וישר הוא, דיין אמת, שופט אמת וצדק, ואוהב דיין האמת, וכל מיתותיו וצדק ואמת. למה ותניח ונתן לו מחלתים על כפנים, שפט עמו ישים על כל הארץ, כזמי דיבר יחיו ויתכן לברך היקומים, וקיצור לנו שכני עפר, כיתה להורות עליך, בארץ אפרים תפיל, והוא הולכים לחפן בו לישיב בו לשרפו, ולא יקום בצד לנו ישיע, המלך יעננו וקוראים. Which direction? רבה וקטנה, מורותה, מריין, גבשי, ותן אינם מוכנות מעל חמי ישראל, גמרו אמן. יש אמר רבה משמע החיים, וסבא ושעה נחמה יצחה ורפואה. וכולה אסחב חברה ורווח וצלה, לא כל עמוד ישראל, גמרו אמן. יש אמר נחמה ושעה כל עמוד ישראל, גמרו אמן. Standing in the house of our congregation for decades, for many years. I have a special opportunity to meeting a few months ago, and we sat and we spoke for maybe an hour. And I thought to myself, if I will just have this opportunity to bring him back. I heard about Rabbi Yehuda, that he was a gifted person, extraordinary person, a big tzaddik, with a lot of Mesirut Nefesh, besides his background. And I thought to myself, we will just have this opportunity to just come and not just to hear how wonderful Rabbi Yehuda was, but to just feel him, to experience his presence, to sit next to him, to learn, and to celebrate maybe. But Hashem has his own plans, and I missed this opportunity as a new rabbi that just came a few months ago. The Gemara in Shabbat, there's a big discussion. What's greater, if a person invites guests, or actually the person that wakes up early in the morning to attend to the Knesset? So it's a big discussion, what's greater than what? But Rabbi Yehuda saw this Gemara and said to himself, I'm not part of this conversation. I'm going to combine all of them together. And he came every morning, his devotion, and his the way of coming every day, twice a day, for decades, come to the synagogue and praying and making sure that we have a minyan, and we're serving and giving food to other people in Achnasat Orchim. And so he combined those two special, unique things of Achnasat Orchim, and at the same time, he was praying there, not just praying, he was learning, so he combined three things together. So that's actually a different platform, a different thing. It's not part of this conversation. It's not part of this disagreement. He said, I'm going to do Achnasat Orchim, and at the same time, I'm going to pray and daven and make people comfortable and feel, and when they learn, I will give them something to eat, to drink, in order for them to feel comfortable. So which parasha, last parasha, the previous parasha, we learned about the Yehuda, that he told to Yosef HaTzadik, how can I say anything? How can I justify myself? But this week's parasha, we see a different thing. Yehuda actually brings a long speech, and he's starting to argue with Yosef HaTzadik, so to speak. So what happened? What's the difference between Yehuda that we had in the previous parasha, last parasha, and Yehuda that is in our parasha? Since we mentioned Rabbi Yehuda had the same characteristics. Last week, Yehuda understood that's not just enough, it's not sufficient to just talk, to come together and help with the minyan, but also he needs to do something. He needs to change his attitude. So this is Yehuda in this week's parasha, coming to Yosef HaTzadik and giving him a long speech, telling him all about the story from the very beginning. When we look at Yehuda, we can see that he combined those two special things by coming physically to shore, not only that, but helping others with a big smile, giving them to eat and to drink every Sunday when they learn Mishnayot, and probably as he finished the entire Mishnah a few times. And so all these things all together just show how special and outstanding Yehuda was. From here, I want, on behalf of Etz Chaim, I would like to send you condolences, and may his merit will protect you and give you strength for the family, for his son Gil and daughter Mina, and for his entire family. Amen.
I feel terribly inadequate to give a proper covered achra
Yehuda Reich. My wife said to me, just tell people to look at the family. That's a tribute enough to children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. We have before us a Gavra Rabbah, a truly great man. I do not feel adequate to give a proper hesped. Because I'll tell us that 3 days of darkness descended into the world. The 8th, the 9th, the 10th day of Teves. We're informed they were national tragedies that occurred on each one of these days. You can permit me to suggest that this year there are 4 days of darkness. As Yehuda Reich left this world on the 7th of Teves, making our world even darker. This week's parsha begins, Vayigash alav Yehuda. Yehuda approached. Let us approach Yehuda right now. Let us try in our own way to approach this iconic personality who blessed us and uplifted us, was beloved by all, as evidenced by the tremendous turnout here, those who are unable to join us physically. Instantaneously, people who met Yehuda fell in love with him, I myself included. Just being around him made you feel good. You felt like a better person because Yehuda Reich was in your life. He was born in 1931, Jablonska, Czechoslovakia, the only child for Mina and František Reich. He lived in a small village outside the capital, Bratislava. And almost 80 years ago, a drop less than 80 years ago, in the spring of 1942, at the age of 11 and a half, Yehuda was taken to Auschwitz with his mother. His father had been taken earlier. His mother never made it through that first night in Auschwitz. He never saw her again after he disembarked from the train. He later related to Gil, after his beloved wife, who was here next to him. After she passed away, he felt the same sense of loss that he did that night in Auschwitz, being separated from his mother. Yehuda was taken into the general population due to his large physical size. He worked in the horse stables. By miracles, he survived. He was liberated by the Russians on January 27th, 1945. The Navi Yecheskel in Perek Lamed Zayin, chapter 37, tells us a story. We're familiar with it from Cholamoy Pesach. Prophecy about dried bones that were brought back to life. Like the story of Yehuda Reich, his dried bones were brought back to life. After the war, he survived and went back to the town of Bratislava, where he found his maternal Aunt Rosa, the only surviving member of the family. She nursed him back to health. Yehuda lived through this crucible in his life. His experience was forged by the aftermath of the Shoah. But let's go back to that prophecy of Yecheskel. What happened to those bones? After those dried bones were brought back to life, what's the end of the story? The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Sadi Beis, Amud Beis, gives 3 opinions as to what happened. Opinion number 1, they stood up. Omru Shira, they sang a song, Vamesu, and then died. Opinion number 2 says the Gemara, Eretz Yisrael. They went to Israel, Nasu Nashim, they married, the Halida Barnum of Honus, gave birth to sons and children, daughters. Opinion number 3 in the Gemara is what happened to these dried bones after they were brought back to life. I'm one of their descendants. Here is the tefillin I inherited from my grandfather. I heard the following fought for Rabbi J.J. Schachter, which ultimately him his father, Herschel Schachter, Zichron Livracha. Herschel Schachter was the first American chaplain to liberate the survivors. He saw the She'eris HaPleita, he was there, and he revealed the following teaching, understanding what the Gemara was telling us. That the Navi bringing back these dried bones is the story of our generation. There are three categories of people who survived the dried bones of the Shoah. Number one, Amdu HaRagleim Omer Shir V'Meisu. There was a group of survivors that stood up, said a shira, thank you, God. I'm happy to be alive, and I've been traumatized. My experiences, I can't sustain a relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I cannot sustain a relationship with the Jewish people. They were unable to hitch their wagon to the caravan, Jewish destiny. We don't blame them. We don't judge them. I don't know what I would have done if I had gone through their same experiences, had the same suffering as they did. This was not the category of Yehuda Reich. These people sang a song and died. Left the Jewish people behind, they're dead to us. There's no legacy from this group of people. There's a second group. All of the Eretz Yisrael, they made Aliyah. Nasir Noshim got married, Validu Bonim Uvanos. There's a group who, after the war, built the state of Israel. In 1948, 25% of the people in Eretz Yisrael were survivors. There was 500,000 Jews, 150,000 of them were the survivors. They built the state. They had tremendous gratitude to these individuals. In a similar way, Yehuda made Aliyah, 1949. He and 119 Slovaks, all of them survivors. They went to the north of Israel, built a kibbutz. It's still standing today. Yehuda lived there for 7 years. He moved to Tel Aviv and married his Eishes Chayil, Sarah Reich, in August 1959. I'm sure many of us know the beautiful story of how they actually met. She was the taxi dispatcher, and he was looking for his lost friends. And when she heard his story, she couldn't understand. Sarah, being a child, one of 10 children, couldn't fathom how there could be someone who has nobody in the whole world, left all alone. So out of the kindness of her heart, she invites Yehuda for a Shabbat meal. Yehuda comes to the house that Friday night with a bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine. And he sees that there's 3 unmarried daughters. Perhaps he asked, "Can I marry one of your daughters?" And 33 days later, Yehuda and Sarah were married. It's biblical. They lived in the Tel Aviv area, then moved in 1972 to Arad because of Gil's health, with asthma. He came to the United States in 1979. But that's not the group of survivors that Yehuda Reich belonged to. There's a third group. I am their direct descendant. Halalu tefillin. Here's the tefillin sheiniach li'avi avi mehem. These are the tefillin. I'm holding on to Saba's tefillin. The Zaidi gave over his tefillin to me. This is Yehuda's group. He held on to the Masorah and he gave it over. He gave over the tefillin. He gave over Shabbos. He connected his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren to the eternity of Am Yisrael. We're gripped by the story of Yehuda Reich. He's a hero in the truest sense of the word. Look at the Doros. Look at the generations that he and his Eishes Chayil established. The bias on the Yisrael. Children who are God-fearing and God-loving. He stands on the shoulders of Yehuda Reich. His grandson, Rabbi Daniel Reich, is a Rav in Levaya, California. In addition to his responsibilities as the Rav, he teaches high school. He had his grandfather tell the story to his Talmidim, sharing it and passing it over as witness to the next generation, passing on the Masorah to the Talmidim of his grandson. And they asked him afterwards, were there any happy days in your life? He said, of course. What was the happiest day of your life, Yehuda? my wedding day. Yehuda continued the Masorah as a proud member of Eitz Achim for 30 years. As was mentioned, the Mishnah Cafe, made the coffee, completed Shas Mishnayos more than once, several times by being there and hearing Rav Masus. He never missed shul, day or night. We were zochet to have him as a member for the last 10 plus years in our shul, to see him on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. Yehuda Reich was the third group of survivors, passed on the tefillin to his children, the Masorah to Minna, to Gil, and to Nancy. At this point, it's important to acknowledge the unparalleled devotion his children gave to him throughout his life, especially in the final difficult years. He passed on the Masorah to his grandchildren, Hila and Stephen, Jonathan, Philip and Aviva, Daniel and Brooke, Rebecca and Noam, Isaac and Bar. Yehuda passed on the Masorah to his great-grandchildren, Nava, Yaakov, Talia, Harry, Julia, Abe, and Sarah, Liba, Shira, Osher, to Joseph, Sonnenschein. I remember the bris in Teaneck. He passed on the Masorah. He was there with his great-grandson. Taken to Auschwitz at 11 and a half, and there he was in Teaneck by a bris. Yehuda was a gentle giant. He never had a quarrel with anybody. He led by example, his yashrus. He taught his children. He was someone who went through the worst experiences in life, lost everything. Who wouldn't know? Special sense of humor, his love of life. It wasn't in an ostentatious way. There were things that he loved to have in the house: shoes and bread. Because these two basic items were denied from him. He wasn't fancy. He was such a pashat yid, a simple, happy, sweet man, a hard worker, never complained, provided for his family. So many fond memories of him in shul, sharing a beer together at Kiddush. I remember one year Simchas Torah. Yehuda was sitting for a little bit, and I walked over to him and I said, there's a cute saying from Shlomo Karlbach. Shlomo Karlbach has a teaching. He says, "Nachon sheyesh lan rosh mitziyan u'moch yotzei min haklal. Aval gewalt eifo haraglayim, ein lanu derech acheret muchrachim l'rkod." I said to Yehuda, we have no other way. We got to dance. The dances that I had the privilege of sharing with Yehuda over the years, Simchas Torah, when our shul had the zechus to honor him, and we danced. We're giving a eulogy. One's allowed to exaggerate a little bit. I want to tell everybody, I'm not exaggerating. I truly believe that Yehuda's dancing would lead us to great Melech HaMashiach. In my mind, I pictured a youthful, vibrant Yehuda Reich dancing and leading us with all of his life experiences and his Simchas HaChayim. The days of darkness have descended into the world. This is a huge loss. He was a link to our Masorah and to our previous generation. I remember a few years ago, Cholamoid Sukkos in Borough Park. I went to the Tish, Munkach Rebbe. I assumed my place in the crowd. And I looked up at the dais. And sitting up at the dais, the Tish with the Rebbe, was Yehuda. And now Yehuda is ascending to his rightful place at that dais in Shemayim, sitting with the Rebbeim, sitting with the Tzadikim, sitting with the Gedolim. And he's right there with them, next to his Eishes Chayil. We love you. We miss you. You're taking a place right now with the princes of our generation. Yehuda, you were a Nasi. You were a prince. Yehי zichro baruch.
שלוש מתנות טובות נתן הקדוש ברוך הוא לישראל. וכולן לא נתנן, אלא על ידי איסורים. אלו הם תורה וארץ ישראל ועולם הבא. מסכת ברכות דף ה' עמוד א'. God gave three beautiful gifts to the Jewish people, but they all come with affliction. Torah, the land of Israel, and the world to come. According to the Gemara in the Sefer Brachot. Ada, you've been given all three of these gifts. Baruch Hashem. Torah, as a member of Etz Chaim for 30 years, you made sure that Shul was the center of your daily routine. Never missed a day. When it was too hard to walk to Etz Chaim, you were so happy to find a new place to pray Shabbat and Chagim at AY and became a member of the Chevra there. For many years at Etz Chaim, I can remember that you made sure there's always coffee and refreshment for the guys at the Mishnah Cafe. I figured that you probably had gone through the whole Mishnah completely. I don't know, 2-3 times, at least. Torah, also, Abba, you were Zochite to have children, grandchildren, and Bezrat Hashem, great-grandchildren. They're all God-fearing and God-loving individuals. Eretz Israel. My father made Aliyah to Israel in January 1949. Israel was just 6 months old. He built the kibbutz that's still there, Kibbutz Leavot Chaviva. He worked the land during the day, and he guarded the kibbutz at night. He did it for 7 years. Moved to Tel Aviv and worked in various jobs wherein his bare hands build the country. Olam Haba, the suffering that Dad experienced earlier in his life at the end of the Nazis and Machshemam can never be adequately put into words. Although he did speak about his experience. Late in life, Dad suffered from poor health, and even with all the top medical care that he was provided with, the past few months and weeks were challenging. I want to pause here and ask on behalf of myself and the family, ask Abba for forgiveness. Slicha. If what was done for you was not enough or not the best that you deserve, or not in the most dignity that you deserve. The most amazing quality about Dad is his ability to connect and be loved by everyone. Despite the difficulties, he always had a smile on his face or acted as a jokester. He was also always concerned about his fellow men, Jew or Gentile alike. It never mattered. He had the ability of making people feel good. Occasionally, we would be taken to the hospital and hospitalized for some various reasons. His doctors would get notified. Other doctors that would take care of him previously for other reasons, not related to his current condition, and they would get notification. And they would just show up at his room. And so, oh, hi, doctor. I said, no, I'm not here on the case. I just wanted to see Dad. And we would chat. And they would tell me that just seeing him and being near him made them feel good. And they said, I don't know how to describe it. Just being next to Dad makes me feel good. I just feel better about life when I talk to him. I guess it's the best way that they can describe what we talk about Chizuk. Since Mom's passing almost 2 years ago, life had been difficult for Dad. In private conversation, as was mentioned just now, after her passing, he mentioned to me that her passing was as difficult for him as the day that he was separated from his own mother upon arrival to Auschwitz. But he was fortunate to have close and loving family around him who never left him alone. Never. Mina, your dedication is amazing. Taking care of his daily needs every day. Nancy, for being there for him, keeping him occupied, playing cards every single day over and over to keep him sharp, keep him happy. And then Johnny. No words can describe your help this past few months, and especially the last days. What a team. Abba will miss you. We'll miss our time together. Watching Israeli TV, listening to Israeli music, talking politics, both Israeli and American, and in general, solving the world problems together that we did. But I know that you're now in a much better place. Next to your mother, next to Ima. I love you.
Amen.
Honored rabbis, members of the Reich family, on this very sad morning, Harriet and I, in great personal sadness, express our sincere condolences to you, Mina, to Gil and Nancy, to all the Reich children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and to their extended family. Yehuda's passing is a great loss to you and to the entire Jewish community. However, instead of adding more words of consolation, I want to give a brief tribute in celebration of his life. Western society has a way of hiding great people within our midst. Our standard for what constitutes greatness makes it difficult to recognize those who truly are great because they don't fit the social standards. You have to be very close to recognize them. I have missed a lot of things in my life, but I did not miss that my friend Yehuda ben Hermina and Frantichak was a great man and a hero for the Jewish people. One of the most brutal battles, and perhaps the most famous battle in World War II, was the battle for the island of Iwo Jima. It began on February 19th, 1945, and it lasted 5 weeks, 36 days. By the time the Marines raised the flag on top of Mount Suribachi, 6,800 Marines were dead, another 20,000 were wounded, and all but 216 of the 22,000 Japanese defenders were dead. When one of the surviving Marines came back to the States, he wrote a famous prayer to express his experiences. He said, "And when I get to heaven, St. Peter I will tell, another Marine reporting, sir, I have spent my time in hell." Yehuda Reich spent almost 1,000 days in hell. Yet he survived and found the courage to live. The Nazis robbed him of his childhood. They robbed him of his education. They robbed him of his family, but not his spirit and his courage. As a lone surviving teenager, he found his way to the new state of Israel. He joined the IDF. He found his life's partner, Sarah. He fathered 2 children. He worked very hard to support them. He moved to the United States to find better opportunity for his children. He became a beloved and respected contributor to every place he worked. He was blessed with children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, and was a respected member of the community and a frequent participant in Yom HaShoah education and in Holocaust education. I remember a Jewish Federation program on Yom HaShoah where Yehuda and I participated. It was a record attendance of families and children. And at the end of the presentation, I said to the audience, please come up and introduce yourselves to Mr. Reich. Shake his hand, touch him, because you will be touching one of the great men you will ever meet. They came up by the dozens, and they waited patiently to meet him. He made an impact on them that they will never forget. That was the same in every program that we participated in. The case for Yehuda's greatness is not made because I say so to you today, for I was his brother and I loved him. The case is made by how his life parallels the lives of other great men. Yaakov Avinu's life was full of pain, danger, and loss. He was a sojourner most of his life, the Torah tells us, and he passed away in a land far away from his home. That describes Yehuda's life well. Since there are no coincidences, I want to remind you that in this week's Parsha, Vayigash, Hashem speaks to Yaakov for the second time, and he says, I shall descend with you to Egypt. I shall surely bring you up, and Joseph shall place his hands on your eyes. So it was with Yehuda. Hashem did bring him up. He was blessed to have his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren on his lap. And at the end, he was blessed to have his own Joseph place his hands on his eyes just before Yehuda Reich was gathered to his people.
I love you, my friend. As we all know, Dad was a very special person. Not only as a dad to me, but a very good friend. There was a language barrier between us, but we always somehow completely understood whatever we said to each other. And it was always with love and admiration. We laughed, we cried together. We played cards together almost every day after my mother-in-law's passing. Most of the time, he beat me. He called me my friend. What an honor. We would end every visit with me saying, I love you. And he would reply, I love you too. We had a very special relationship. I will miss him terribly. May your soul be bound in bundle of light. I love you, my friend. You're trouble. Although I can speak for hours about you and how much you mean to our family. Due to the weather and the current conditions, I'm going to briefly focus on three special aspects of your life. Number one, the special relationship you had with me and my family. Number two, your unwavering commitment to survive any Nisayon that you ever confronted. And number three, your Abbas Kal Yisrael, Abbas Eretz Yisrael, and Abbas HaTorah. Saba, as your oldest grandchild, you raised me in your home and we had a very special bond since I was a little girl. Thank you for the abundance of care and love that you and Saba gave me. Once I got married, our closeness grew even stronger. You and Stephen became best friends and enjoyed going on your annual trips together. There's a reason that Saba was sitting at the dais of Munkash. He would go to Simchat's Beza Shoevas together in Borough Park. He would always go to Rockefeller Center this time of year and go shopping for suits for Yom Tov in Brooklyn, just to name a few things. Nava, Yaakov, Tali, and Harry are incredibly fortunate to have spent such a significant amount of time with you these past 2 years. You had a wonderful influence on them, and they will miss you very much. Your love for our family was endless, and we will be forever blessed to have had you in our lives. From an early age, I was always heartbroken to hear about the atrocities of the Holocaust that you had to endure. You would often reminisce how you were completely alone from the time you entered Auschwitz until you married Saba. Losing your entire family at 11 years old and miraculously escaping the Nazis' numerous attempts of murder, you somehow never gave up on your perseverance to survive. Saba, you taught me a lot, but perhaps
More than anything else was what it means for one to fight for their survival, yet never give up hope in Hashem. Despite everything you went through, you turned to Saba's beautiful Sephardic heritage, Torah, and Yiddishkeit. Without you and your unwavering commitment to survive and perpetuate Judaism in our family, we would never be here today. No, none of us. None of the Reichs, none of our families, the married children, everyone. You had a deep sense of Avos Klal Yisrael, love for other Jews. You loved your friends at Yitzchayim, at AY, and our community of the Edison Island Park community, and of course our special family. We loved hearing you ask after any time you returned from somewhere. You wanted to always know how many Jews were there. And every time we went to a wedding or every time we went away for Shabbos, were there a lot of Jews? To us, this meant that you felt connected to Am Yisrael at large and were confident and proud of the flourishing Jewish community. You had a deep sense of Avos Yisrael, of Avos Eretz Yisrael, love for the land of Israel. Arriving in Eretz Yisrael in 1949, working in a kibbutz, you were one of the builders of the beautiful state of Israel and ingrained in us to love it as well. You had a deep sense of Avos Torah, love for the Torah. Up until the last few months, you were one of the first to open the doors of the 6 a.m. minyan and hardly ever missed davening in a minyan 3 times a day. You were always so proud of your grandchildren and great-grandchildren's commitment to Shmiras HaMitzvot and accomplishments in Torah. I want to end by asking you for mechila for anything I have ever done to upset you. I hope that in Shamayim you are mochel me and you will be a melit yosher for our entire family. Your life was an inspiration to us all. You are such a good person to everyone, and I truly hope that I am so to be like you, and that the lessons that you taught me, you taught all of us, will be embodied in our children as well, for generations and generations to come. You and Savta had such an impact on all of us. We love you very, very much, and we will miss you forever.
And I'm going to say something very briefly. Quick story about Saba. Actually, something that just happened very recently. I think it's something that's worth sharing just to see. Everybody says very beautiful things about Saba, and I think it's something that's worth sharing to see a little bit about how Saba thought. As many people said, Saba was a simple man, and I say that in the most endearing of terms. He loved his family, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. He liked having lechem shapor in the house, maybe with a little bit of vina. He liked watching a little bit of basketball. He loved to talk about politics, Israeli, American politics. But I think, and it's a theme that has come up time and again in some of the eulogies that have happened just now, Saba loved shul. He loved going to shul. He loved being in shul. He loved being with the people in shul. It meant a great deal to him. Saba never missed shul. He was never late. Certain memories that I'll have of Saba forever are things like being under his talit for Brachat Kohanim, him making fun of us for being tired at 5 a.m. slichot. These are the things that I'll certainly remember, and they do center around shul. Me personally, I always was in awe of this aspect of Saba, that after what he had gone through, he felt the need and the pull to always be a part of shul, to always be a part of Jewish gathering in that sense, to always be a part of davening, to always put tefillin on every single day on top of the numbers that were tattooed on his arm. There was just something about shul that Saba
it was so strong, his connection to going to shul. Last Friday night, if I could, I think I got a glimpse a little bit into perhaps how Saba thought about these things. I went to go visit Saba last Friday night. He was already in hospice care at that point, so not doing too well, but had some lucid moments in about the hour that I spent with him. And there was one question, we talked a lot about his experience in the Holocaust, and he shared that story a number of times. But there was one question I guess I had always wanted to ask him, never did, but I thought I'd like to ask him before I don't have the chance to do so. So I asked my dad to ask it for me so that there would be nothing lost in translation. And I asked Saba, I said, in the camps in Auschwitz, when you were going through that, was there ever a moment, were there times where you would pray, right? So Saba, his family's upbringing, he didn't grow up in necessarily a religious home, and you could understand somebody perhaps not praying through an ordeal like that, but for whatever the reason, nonetheless, I felt the need to ask, did you daven during that time? Did you ever daven to Hashem? And he said, yes, he did. He would put his eyes up to Shemayim, and he would pray in check. And right after he gave us that answer, he then went on to say, but it didn't help. That was a profound thing to me personally, because if you think about that for a second, he couldn't admit that it helped to daven, because although he was saved, and he said it right afterwards, 6 million Jews perished. So although he was saved, the kahal, right, was not saved. So although he prayed, it was hard for him to say that it helped. So on my walk back home, I had a lot of time to think about that answer. And to me personally, I think that is in part why Saba had such a connection to shul, because for him, the loss of kahal was so great, was so hard, that any moment that he had a chance to gather with 10 Jews in a room and pray, to make coffee for the rabbi so he can have his Mishnah class with everybody together, those moments of being together with fellow Jews, for him, obviously had a place of comfort and obviously was a path forward for him. Shul meant a great deal, because I think that for Saba was a way to feel connected to a kahal that he felt was really, really hard to have lost, as so many people felt. And in thinking about this, I just want to, and I'll end with this. The beginning of Yedid Nefesh, which a lot of people say on Friday night, after the first line, there's a line that I think really does sum up Saba in this regard. It says, Yaretz avdecha kamo ayil yishtacha ve'mo adarecha, yerav lo yididotecha, minofetzu v'chol ta'am. Right? Like a deer, your servant, run and fall prostrate before your beauty. To him, your love is sweeter than honey from the comb, than any taste. For Saba, that love of shul, I think, is summed up in this. I mean, run like a deer was instinctive, it was innate. The fact that he could gather with other fellow Jews in shul and continue that legacy after what he went through, the idea of being there no matter what, never missing it, being the first one in, the last one out after he cleaned up breakfast for everybody after a Sunday morning, to him, that was sweeter than anything physically that you could taste. It was sweeter and greater than anything he could have had.
Daniel has to go on to it. Yeah. Yeah. No, but Daniel has to be a co-host, I think. Daniel has to.
Isaac, I'm just going to share my screen.
Daniel has to share his speech on YouTube. I don't know how you do that. Johnny. You need to share this with Daniel. I have no idea what to do. Stefano, somebody. With Daniel? Just tell Daniel to play. He's doing it. Oh, he's doing it? Okay. He's doing it. Is it possible to plug in? Daniel, it's time for you to speak.
I'm going to try, Bez Hashem, to give a brief and incomplete hesped in honor of my Saba, Yehuda ben Frantashech, Zecher Sadik v'Kadosh Levracha.
Daniel, restart it, please.
going to try, Bez Hashem, give a brief, incomplete hesped in honor of my Saba, Yehuda ben Frantashech, Zecher Sadik v'Kadosh Levracha, L'chai Olam Haba. I say incomplete because of two factors. Number one, of course, my own inadequacies. Number two, the rest of my family and Saba's closest friends already prepared most honorable eulogies, and I'm just hopefully going to be adding one more additional perspective as Saba's third grandchild. Not by any means the full picture, as it would be impossible to do so. The Tosefta in the fourth parak of Maseches Brachos tells us that there was once a group of Rebbe Kiva's students gathered around discussing the following. Why did Yehuda merit to bear the crown of Israel? That his descendants became the royal family of the Jewish people. Mipnei ma zacha Yehuda l'malchus. For what reason was Yehuda given the great honor to be given the crown of kingship for Klal Yisrael? Today I want to ask, Mipnei ma zacha Saba Yehuda l'malchus. How did Saba Yehuda merit royalty amongst Klal Yisrael? How did Saba become a person who is not just liked by, but literally loved by every person he met? How did Saba, together with Safta Allah Shalom, rise from the ashes of unimaginable horrors to build a family of Torah-dedicated Jews? How did Saba become a person who Gedolei Yisrael would seek out to receive brachot from? I say this because I witnessed it on more than just a few occasions. Literally, Gedolim coming to get brachos from Saba. How did Saba become one of the kings of the Jewish people? The Tosefta attempts with different suggestions to rationalize this great reward based on tremendous accomplishments and deeds Yehuda did during his lifetime. And we can do the same. Maybe Saba merited to become a melech in Klal Yisrael because of all the countless cups of coffee and breakfast he set up to enhance the post-shachrit learning at Eitz Chaim every morning. Or because he wrapped tefillin every morning over the numbers tattooed on his arm. Or perhaps because Safta Allah Shalom told me that in 59 years of marriage, Saba never asked her to do anything for him. Let me repeat that. That in 59 years of marriage, Saba never asked Safta to do anything for him. Maybe it's for those reasons Saba became one of the kings of Israel. But ultimately, Rabbi Akiva gives the final reason in the Tosefta. The accepted reason for why Yehuda merited the kingship. Because he sanctified God's name. Amru lahem, mipnei shekidesh shemo shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. For when the Jewish people were running away from the Egyptians and were caught at their dead end, the sea, there was one man who stood up, took the leadership, and sojourned into the water, Nachshon, from the tribe of Yehuda. And it was only then that the sea split and the Jewish people were saved. And it was for this mighty display of leadership that Yehuda merited the crown of the Jewish people. For this was the greatest sanctification of God's holy name in this world. However, There's one problem with this explanation from Rabbi Akiva. Yehuda isn't the one that jumped in. Nachshon jumped in. So why does Yehuda get the credit? Why did Yehuda receive the crown of kingship? Nachshon, his descendant, performed this incredible feat decades after Yehuda's passing. So why does Yehuda merit the kingship? Because Yehuda set the stage. He lived by example. He set up a family that understood what was truly important in life, with the right values that were totally internalized by his children and by his children's children, so that when the time came in Jewish history when they needed someone to jump in, it was Yehuda's descendant that jumped in. Yehuda gets the credit. Yehuda is given the crown of kingship because he set the stage. He was the model. Saba set our stage. He lived by example. He set up a family that understood what was truly important in life, with the right values that were totally internalized by his children. The greatest examples of kibbud av v'em in the world. Mommy, Daddy, and Aunt Mina. And hopefully will be internalized by Brooke and myself to be passed down to our children. Everything Saba did was a lesson in Torah values and in sanctifying God's name in the world, whether or not he even meant it, in knowing how to choose right over wrong every time. He was setting up the stage each time he smiled at you when you met him at shul, as if you just brought him a winning lottery ticket. Each time he tickled you under his talus or stepped on your toes during Birchas Kohanim. Every game of Sheva he played with you. Each time he spoke about Savta, his wife, Allah Shalom. Recently, I had the great honor of going to visit Saba for one last time. While I was there, I hosted a Zoom session with my students at the boys' high school here in San Diego. And they had a question and answer session with Saba. They asked him different questions about his life, his experiences in the Holocaust, his experiences in being a pioneer in the land of Israel, coming to America. And at the end of the session, after they're asking Saba about all these horrible things he experienced in his life, I turned to that Saba, I said, what was the happiest day of your life? And he looked at me and he said, when I got married. The greatest moment of his life. How did Saba become one of the kings of the Jewish people? Because he set the stage for us all. But Malchut is not handed to a person. As we know, Saba taught us many, many, many times, and as all of you probably have heard him say, of course, my siblings and my cousins know very well, B'shvil kavod tzarich la'avod. To attain honor, to attain kingship, takes hard work. Thank you, Saba, our Melech, for being my greatest role model. Yanishmato tzura b'tzura chaim.
Before I begin my speech, I'd like to thank Hashem for the unbelievable opportunity of getting to live with my grandparents throughout my life. I know many people my age don't have such an opportunity, and I try not to take it for granted, the opportunity that I have being with them almost every day of my life. I never really thought that this day was going to happen. sure that there are many grandchildren that feel that way about their grandparents. But I had proof. The easiest proof, obviously, is his trials and tribulations throughout his whole life, specifically throughout the Holocaust. Leaving the Holocaust with no family, no money to his name, but kept on going, kept on persevering, and then ultimately throughout these last years, his different tribulations in his health. But he kept on going, kept on persevering, to a point where I thought that this was, in my head, this was just going to be the obvious outcome until the end, until we greet Mashiach. I envisioned myself walking with Saba, maybe pushing him in a wheelchair, greeting Mashiach. Well, sorry, Harav, this day has come. So I'd like to try to share a few words to honor my grandfather, my Saba. Summing up what my Saba meant to me is a nearly impossible task to put into words, but to try to convey the message to everybody here. The only word that I could really say is that he was my hero. He was just truly my hero. Every time I got to go with him to shul, take him to shul, or even do more mundane things like taking him to the supermarket or sitting with him on the couch. Every one of those times, every association with him was another badge of honor onto my name. The fact that I got to have any association with such a person, which was multiplied by the fact that this person was my grandfather. As mentioned by many, he touched and inspired almost every person that he met. He just had that unique quality about him. And there are so many lessons that I could say about him that it would be impossible and we would be here all day. So I decided to cut it down to three things that I kept on thinking about throughout this last day. Firstly is Yashros, his honesty. My grandmother used to say he's straight as an arrow. Any deviation of straightness, any deviation of honesty was he couldn't understand it. It was so foreign to him. He was just so honest, and there was no time he would get annoyed if people weren't honest, whether that be politically or any other way. It was so foreign to him. He couldn't understand how anybody could do anything but be an honest human being. Secondly, he just truly cared about other people in a true way. I remember many times, and it wasn't only people that he knew, it was people even that he didn't know. I remember many times coming home from school and seeing my grandfather watching the Israeli news or news in general and just crying on the couch, watching the pain of other people. He didn't have to know them. He just tried to do whatever he can to help, especially those that he tried to help anybody that he can in any way. And if he couldn't, it just gave him pain. He cared about other people so much. One story that he told me, he only told me the story once, of his times in Auschwitz. He told me that at one point he was working in the kitchen in some capacity, and he said because of that he would try to sneak out food for himself and others. And he told me one time he was caught by the Nazis when giving food to another inmate, and he said he was beaten to a pulp. So I asked him, I said, Saba, after that, did you ever do it again? And he looked at me kind of surprised that I would ask such a question. And he said, yes, of course. That was just who he was. And of course, that's an extreme example, but that's just who he was. And he took that with him wherever he went. Just try to help others in whatever capacity he can. He really, truly did care about other human beings. Lastly, is Simchas HaChaim, his joy of life, and his aspects of never giving up, truly until the end. Even when we brought him home from the hospital this last time, he mentioned that it'll just be a few days until he starts walking again. He just kept on pushing forward and forward. Nothing was going to stop him. He had every excuse in the world to be sad, despondent, and depressed, angry at the world. But that wasn't him. His smile was infectious. And he kept on pushing forward. And even through the hardest times, he kept on pushing forward, and he instilled that within all of us. He inspired all of us with all of these different qualities and many other qualities. Anybody that knows him was able to glean from him so many different things. I started the speech saying that I never really thought that this day would happen. And in a way, I think I'm correct. Although my grandfather is no longer physically with us, his lessons and everything that he taught us, and I know I can speak for myself, there won't be another step I could take that will be without him. He'll be with us, with myself forever. So although he's not physically with us, his spirit and his life continues on. Sadiqim b'mosam nikra'im chayim. He continues to live, even if it's not with us in a physical sense. Going on will be difficult. Will be very, very difficult. But I know that's what you want from all of us. And I know, and one of the qualities that you taught us, no matter how difficult, no matter what, just keep on going, keep on fighting. He was a fighter, he just kept on going, no matter what obstacles were before him. I'm going to try to live up to what it means to be your grandchild in every step that I take.
Yeah. שהם סגרו את החבלים ואנחנו בעד ההוכחה אני אגיד את הפסוקים רק צריך להדריך בסדר? יכול להדריך? מי שיוריד give the stick to a beaver or somebody. Okay? Pole bearers.
ולא יאיר כל חמתו. והוא אחור מכפר עוון, ולא ישחית ויובל השבחו, ולא יאיר כל חמתו. Each one will take a shovel, not to pass us to each other because
Keep it on this side. Keep it on this side.
Another side. Other direction. Yeah, this. חבר עוון, אדוני השליט, בא להשיב פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. והוא רחום, חבר עוון, אדוני השליט, בא להשיב פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. והוא רחום, חבר עוון, אדוני השליט, בא להשיב פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. והוא רחום, חבר עוון, אדוני השליט, בא להשיב פה ולא יאיר כל חמתו. והוא רחום, חבר עוון, השליט בא לסופו, לא יאיר כל חמתו.
Phil, Phil, it's gonna die. Phone's gonna die. There's 10% battery left. You put my phone back on. Back on. No, do you have another phone to do it from? That you can make a co-host? Ask, I can do it. Can you get it, Isaac? Even. Oh, Isaac, do you have another phone? This is gonna die.
Gonna die? Okay, okay. Stephanie's gonna make, yeah, he's gonna reconnect those. And he's gonna take over. Who's the host now, Daniel?
Jonathan.
Jonathan? So you can make me, okay, that's fine. How they send?
Here, Isaac, mine. Is it on mine? Oh, 823. Go into the WhatsApp today.
Okay. I'm black, it's hard to see. No, this. Now, what time is this contract? Yeah, but Jonathan is the one with the authority.
You see shovel. So why can't we just do it from mine? Why can't I just open the note on the main screen? It's gonna die this one. So we have to switch phones. So you need to make me a host.
Oh, Daniel first. Daniel first. Tell him to make
Me a host. So.
Daniel told me to he hasn't done it. He hasn't
Make it.
hold it.
What did it say? How do we know when he did it?
Put a Viva thing in there.
Huh? Yes, you could turn that one off. So,
Did you manage to switch off?
yeah. you want the check?
It's okay. Daniel texted me, but I don't know what he said. Can you check with Daniel right in here? Okay, hold this. Volume.
Gil, אתה רוצה?
ידינו לא שפכו את הדם הזה ועינינו לא ראו. צדיק אתה אדוני וישר משפטיך, צדיק אדוני בכל דרכך וחסי בכל מעשיו צדקך צדיק לעולם ותוכנתך אמת. משפטי אדוני אמת צדקו יחדיו. ואשר דבר מלך שלטון מי יאמר לו מה תעשה והוא באחד ומי ישבנו נפשו יבטא ויעש. עצור תמים פעולות בכל דרכך משפט. אין אמונה בין אבן צדיק וישר הוא ויען אמת שופט אמת וצדק ברוך דיין האמת כל זכור בכתב צדק ואמת. טוב שם משמן טוב ביום המוות מיום היוולדו. טוב דבר הכל נשמע ואת האלוהים ירא ואת מצוותיו שמור כי זה כל האדם יעזו חסידים בכבוד ירננו על משכבותם מנוחה נכונה בשבעה על כנפי השכינה במעלת קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים בחילוט עצמים וכפרת האשמים והרחבת פשע והקרבת ישע וחמלה וחנינה מלפני שוכן נאונה וחלקת טובה לחיי העולם הבא שם תהיה מנת מחיתת בשבעת נפש השם הטוב יהודה בן הנה מן הרוח אדוני תלכנו בגן עדן תיבטא מן העלמא דין כי רות ערערה מראה שמיה והרע המלך ברחמה יחוס ויחמול עליו ילווה עליו השלום ועל משכבו יהיה שלום תכתיב יבוא שלום ינוח על משכבותם הולך לרחוב והוא וכל שוכבי עמו ישראל וכבר רחמים והצדקות כן יהי רצון ונאמר אמן. מילה המוות לנצח ומחר אדוני אלוהים דמעה מעל כל פנים וחרפת עמו יסיר מעל כל הארץ כי אדוני דיבר יחיו מתיך נבלתי יקומון יקיצו ואנו שוכני עפר טל אורות עליך ועל בארץ לפעמים תפיל ברוך המחפר ועולה ישחית ובא לשבחו ולא יהיה כל חמתו אדוני יושיע המלך יעננו ביום קוראנו.
תדל ויתקדש מרבה והוא עתיד להחדה עלמה ולהחדה מפתיעה ושברה יחלה תצרק חיה ולבנה חרתה עד ירושלם ולמעקר ולחנה דליה מערה ולקבע פיחנה יקירה דשמיא ולידרי וזיבי ביקרי אמן. וחייכון ומכון וחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה וזמן קריב אמרו אמן.
שמי רבה שלום על מי המיה
מבורך שלום על מי המיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה ברכו עם כל ברכתה שירתה ושודה ונחמתה דמירן ועלמה ואמרו אמן. תגלה חרבה וקדמה ומותה ומרעין בישין ידי מננה מנחון מעל עלמי ישראל ואמרו אמן. שמע רבה משמיה חיים וסבה וישועה נחמה ושפה ורפואה גאולה תזכה ברכה ורבע הצלה לך לעמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועושה שמוע וחמה ושלומות לעמו ישראל ואמרו אמן.
אחר אדוני תמיד מצביע בצחצחי נפשך ועצמתך יחלית והיית כגן רבה כי מוצא מים אשר לא יחזרו עמיו אז יזענק אדוני וקרבתך במות הארץ וחייתך נחלת יעקב אביך כי פי אדוני דיבר. עד הלב, שירות הלב. sweater, we're not. Was this your sweater? And black.
Yeah.
Does you have something? No. Okay, so no, just this one. Whichever you have. Come ne tem מתוך שעה ורצים לפעמים ולא ספר דבר עוד.
אמרתי מנחם יעשו את עכשיו לציון שלהם.
You know, I don't have time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have time.
What do you mean? I have your stuff.